concerns people have, of course, is when why should we do anything because India is just going to be ready.
So he's going to talk to us a little bit about IDCOL, and we have Mayukh, who is representing Milaap, which is an organization that uses a very innovative investment strategy to help finance microfinance organizations interested in energy lending, as well as clean water, education, and other issues. We have Govind, who is the CEO of what I think will be a leading MFI, is actually already in a very short time a key player in the Indian microfinance sector. And Govind came from ICICI Bank and has a very interesting perspective on financing, both having been a banker that financed microfinance organizations, as well as now being an MFI that is on the receiving end of that and is poised to enter the energy sector. So we're really interested to hear your views. And we also have Saheba, who is with Kiva, that many of you know as a leading crowdfunding organization, but that has developed not only a strategy for financing microfinance organizations through a peer-to-peer platform, but also focusing now on energy organizations as well. So we're going to hear from each of these panelists. I'm going to start with Nazmul, and then we'll go to Saheba after that, because you may have to leave. We're running a little bit late, and I'm sorry, that's my fault for allowing the conversations to go on, but I think people were having fun. So we'll then go to you, Saheba, and then if you have to leave, we'll miss you, but but it will be great to hear from you. So Nazmul, I'd love you to tell us how you would characterize IDCOL. You were telling me yesterday that it's a private company, but it's government owned. So if you could explain to people that concept, what the benefits are of that kind of concept, how you became involved in energy finance. That was something that was added on later, what the rationale was for that, the type of financing that's provided, and really the catalytic effect of IDCOL in terms of the Bangladeshi clean energy sector.
First of all, thank you, Nick and Armacost, for inviting me over here. Very happy to be here. IDCOL is a government institution, but you rightly mentioned it works in the private sector. So the way we prefer to term ourselves is that IDCOL is a public-private partnership. Actually, we tell outsiders is that the ownership with the government is only a coincidence. Like government acted here only as an investor, not in terms of running the company, employing people out of government services. So similar is true for IDCOL. The board is a public-private partnership by itself, while we have representation both from the public sector and the private sector. The management is entirely from the private sector, and government being there as the owner, we enjoy the privilege being a government-owned company. So that's how it is. We, being a government-owned company, took all the privileges that was needed for us to proceed. But then again, we had the private sector dynamism. So it's a public-private partnership company, as you termed to refer it. In terms of renewable energy, we actually started renewable energy in 2003. After quite some years, the company was established. And the introduction of renewable energy was accidentally, and we were very unwilling to. So at this point, we are very proud that we have taken that initiative back in 2003. We were, and still is, the premier infrastructure financing company of the country. We provide large amount of loans to large projects. We were not into microfinancing. We actually laughed when we heard that we have to provide a couple of $100 loan to a household, because our lowest loan size at that point in time was $80 million. So but we are very happy. Now, we started our renewable energy activities using the Solar Home System program in 2003 with the World Bank. At that point in time, we were, of course, we jointly decided, but at that point in time, it looked very aggressive. 50,000 solar home system over a period of 5.5 years. Solar was not present in the country. At that point in time, I think only Gramin Shakti did solar home system on a limited scale, but till then, only 7,000 solar home system over a period of about 7 years were installed. So 50,000 over 5.5 years looked very aggressive to us. But we are very happy to complete the project in about 3 years. So the 50,000 target was completed in 2005 sometime. So given the sector demand, we set an internal target to finance 1 million systems by 2012. So that 1 million target was fulfilled in 2010. So now we have again revised our target to 6 million, while it still stands now, by 2016, on which we are working on. So till August 2013, about 2.5 million systems have already been installed. Let me also give some of the other key statistics so that you understand the pace and size of the program. In terms of investment, my company already invested about $500 million in solar home system program alone, and we plan to invest $1 billion by 2015. In terms of job creation, it created about 70,000 jobs. In terms of outreach, we covered 13 million people of the country, which is 8% of the country's entire population in this program. Government is saving about $45 million subsidy every year through the saved kerosene that has been resulted out of this initiative. The program is already registered with the CDM Executive Board, and from this year we will start collecting revenue approximately $6-7 million every year out of the CDM. In terms of the innovative aspects of the program, there were many. First of all, the point that I would like to focus on is that, you see, when we started this program back in 2003, we had a comprehensive survey done. We did not start the program just in one fine day. We had a survey of 500 solar home systems done on a pilot basis, which we gave free to the partners, but we required them to sell on credit to the household so that we could test the market. We did not start with a single model as well. Parallelly, the country started with two models. One is the ownership model, which was our model. Another was the rent model, the design copied from Sri Lanka, which was done parallelly by the Rural Electrification Board. So initially, the World Bank tried to push the rent model to us, but we, in our opinion, and by discussing with our partner, did not find it a feasible solution. But the World Bank did eventually implemented that program with some other partner, which was the Rural Electrification Board, which at some point had to shut down because it was a big failure. So the rent model, although it worked perfectly in Sri Lanka, did not work in our country. In our country, the ownership model, it worked and was very much popular and still continuing. So the innovative aspects that we introduced in the program, first of all, the model, the business case itself. We made sure that it is, as I also explained a little bit earlier, that we made sure that it is a win-win scenario for everyone. First of all, let me share how we ensured win-win scenario for the household. For the household, in our country, the alternative which they used otherwise was kerosene lamps. So we had a survey done, finding out what is the average kerosene consumption done by the household and what is the average expenditure that average household incurs out of it. And parallelly, we compared if the household is requested or is proposed to take a solar home system, which will obviously provide a superior solution because compared to kerosene lamp is electricity, But if they are proposed to take it at the same price, there is no reason a household shouldn't take it, because they are not incurring any additional expenditure. So what we did, we calculated what is the average expenditure for kerosene and what is the average installment size if the household decides to take the system on loan, and the gap amount was financed as subsidy by IDCOL. That was needed for the startup market because the rural areas were not familiar with solar technology. So unless they are given this additional incentive at the beginning, there will be very little interest to kick off the program. So we started with high subsidy, initially about 25% of the system cost. But eventually, the subsidy calculation of IDCOL was always done using an interesting formula. That eventually the price of kerosene always went up with the fuel increased price. And the price of solar home system went down. I recall still in 2003, Nikki, the price was about $4 per watt. Yes, and now as we stand now, it's about less than $1 per watt. So the price of solar has come down over the years. The price of kerosene went up. So the subsidy requirement, the gap, closed down. So from this year, we are providing no subsidy. The subsidy from 25% of the system cost is gradually was reduced every year so that the market is more prepared to ensure sustainability of the program, which has always been the key focus. So from this year, we do not provide any subsidy. We only provide some subsidy to the small systems which are focused to the ultra-poor segment of the community, but not for regular solar home system. Same went for the refinancing. So that was the household perspective. We provided them subsidy gradually, and so that they do not have to pay extra compared to their alternative cost, but they get a superior service. So we ensure win-win scenario for the household. The next step is for the microfinance institution. We identified two major challenges. One is they did not have the capacity. They were not in technology selling business. They were a financial institution. So we always, from day one of the program, try to introduce focus within the institution. As I mentioned, we always encourage them to segregate their activity from their other microfinance activity so that the people who are involved there, the cell officer, his performance can be monitored in terms of his performance in this program, not in terms of selling 10 other products. So we always encourage them, and eventually, except one or two, those who didn't, they failed out of the program. Those who did succeeded with the program. So we provided with adequate training, capacity building, support to the newly established companies of the MFIs who are focused purely on renewable energy dissemination, the technology providing after-sales service, as well as providing microfinance loan. So one-stop solution, that is the beauty of the program. From a rural household, you do not want to go to one person for financing, one person for technology. So you want to get everything from a single point solution, and this is one of the beauty of the program. It's one-to-one relationship. There is no one-to-many relationship except with IDCOL. There is no one-to-one-many relationship with any other parties, just one-to-one relationship. So everyone knows that this one part is responsible for everything, so that you do not end up having a lack of coordination in the program. So as I mentioned, in terms of subsidy allocation, we gradually made this zero subsidy level. It's amazing how a developing country can afford that, but still the program is growing at 30% rate every year. Same went for refinancing. The challenges, one of the challenges I already mentioned for microfinance was this capacity building, for which we had a lot of capacity development support, which is still going on for the microfinance institution. The second was the refinancing. Because microfinance institution, they will sell in credit, they will get buy from supplier in cash. So they don't have such huge amount of working capital for millions of systems. So we provided them with low-cost refinancing. But then again, this was not upfront financing, it was refinancing. It was very important because the microfinance institutions can only claim once they incur expenses. So you ensure before disbursing money that their progress has been made, that's why they're asking for money. So we provided a long-term refinancing because when we talk about sustainability, we have to think about this sustainability will have to be across the sector players. So the microfinance institutions will have to be sustainable down the line, they have to make money. So we provided them a long-term, low-cost refinancing so that their institutional capacity is also developed, and at some point they can run the program even if no further support is provided from IDCOL. That was our plan. So you will be happy to learn that now we have 47 microfinance institutions, Grameen Shakti being the largest one, but there are many large ones now, and probably there will be more microfinance institutions as the sector becomes larger, and we believe that more are needed. So we provided them this technical capacity building support and as well as the low-cost financing support so that they can on-lend the same to the household level so that household can buy the system on front. We actually initiated many other things. You see that a decade already spent in this program. So obviously, whatever challenges that a person would face, we have faced everything. And we had to come out of everything, be it in terms of poor service quality, be it in terms of poor equipment, be it in terms of low collection efficiency. So we have gone through every aspect of the project, and we have made necessary evolution development in the model as well so that it becomes more perfect to the need of the sector. So one important aspect here is the quality control, which I just spent some time on. This is very important actually, and this is not the duty of the MFI to ensure quality. So then again, we want competitiveness. So to ensure quality, the one option was IDCOL will buy everything and hand it over to the MFI so that they can install, so that no quality issues arise. But we are a financial institution by ourselves. We are not in procuring millions of dollars worth of equipment. And then again, that will not ensure sustainability. So what we did rather, we established a technical standards committee. Every supplier, before selling any single equipment in the program, they have to apply and get certified by the technical standards committee of IDCOL. This is how we ensure quality, that every single equipment before being sold to the MFIs are being tested and verified, so that the MFI can rely on it. And if there is any subsequent problem with the technology, you want me to shorten that? Yeah. Or actually,
You're a mind reader.
Yeah. So give it 2 minutes more.
Yes, please. But I actually want to ask you a couple of questions as well.
Oh, all right. Okay.
So
yeah, so
finish your thought, and then let me ask you a question.
I'll just add 2 small points. One is the quality control. We initiated it through suppliers enlistment, so that no poor quality equipment can be sold in the program. Every supplier and the equipment is known to us. Another is we have a very large quality control team who visit household level randomly, so that they can check and verify. The last point that was innovative aspect was the local capacity development in supplies. Along with initially, everything was imported. Now, nothing is imported as the conventional, or most of it is not imported, because we also parallelly develop and finance the local support industries so that everything can be sourced.
Thank you. Thank you for that very comprehensive explanation. One thing I wanted you to just reflect on very quickly, do you think if IDCOL didn't exist, that we would be talking about 2.5 million solar home systems in Bangladesh?
I firmly don't think so. I don't think so, because as I mentioned, solar was not new in our country when it started. Solar was already present there over 7 years, 7,000 systems. If I think there will be a short video presentation. At some point you will see on our program. You will see that it was a quantum leap when IDCOL started, how the program grew over the years. So no, of course I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly. I think that there's been, in our view, and that's partly why we wanted to have IDCOL for this panel, we think that IDCOL played a very important role in catalyzing the sector. And one of the very special things that IDCOL did was provide a particular type of financing. It provided, soft local currency financing at the early stages when organizations, microfinance organizations, energy companies wanted to experiment with this new sector. And that type of financing is very, very important in the early stages. When we were talking yesterday, you mentioned that the expectation was that in 2014 there would be a move to more commercial funding. And you talked a little bit about how perhaps you haven't quite reached that point. I wonder if you could share some of those observations with the group here.
In terms of commercialization, that has always been the focus for this program when we started in 2003. So all the activities over the years that we have undertaken has been taken with this thing in mind, that at some point this has to be commercially viable. That's why we have gradually reduced the subsidiary to zero level now. Already we have at the same time, parallelly, you see the other financial product that was offered by IDCOL was the credit financing, soft credit. It was initially given at 6% interest rate. In our country, it's very concessionary because the commercial rate is about 15%. And it was given for 10-year period to the MFI so that they can on-lend to the household. Over the years, we have reduced the tenor of the loan. Now it stands at 5 to 7 years, this range. This is already commercial because commercial loans are available at maximum 7-year tenor. The interest rate has been raised to 9%. It is not purely commercial yet, but it is already semi-commercial. It's somewhere towards that. So down the line, this should be fully commercialized. That is always our objective.
Yes, and so you see that with IDCOL, this has been over a 10-year period, and now you're at the stage where you're beginning to move into the commercial space. And I think that that's a very interesting model to think about in other country contexts, that you can't expect in year 1 or year 2 for companies to be able to do this kind of financing at fully commercial rates. So I think that example is quite important. And at that point, what I'd like to do is move to Saheba, because Kiva is offering, Kiva is an investor and is offering a different kind of a financing model, which is also very useful to microfinance organizations and now energy companies, which is a kind of an innovation on the Kiva model itself. And so can you explain to our audience here how the Kiva model has evolved and the way in which you view what you're doing as catalytic in a slightly different way than IDCOL perhaps?
Sure. So Kiva is a crowdfunding platform based in the US. Our model is to alleviate poverty through lending. I was actually hoping that Mayukh would go first and talk to you about what exactly crowdfunding is. But just to give you a little bit of an explanation for what we do. So Kiva partners with local organizations on the ground in the countries that we work with. So if you are an MFI, you could be a Kiva partner. Our partners post profiles of borrowers onto the Kiva website. And our lenders then come and fund these loans, and they can do so in increments of $25. So our lenders are quite literally people like you and me. I could go to the Kiva website and make a $25 loan to a woman in India for a clean cook stove. And what Kiva does is sort of collects all these online loans from our lenders and passes them on to our field partner, who then disperses the loan to the borrower. And on a monthly basis, our partners collect the repayments from the borrowers, transfer them back to Kiva, and our lenders get repaid. So these three sort of components of our mission statement are all equally important to us. It's everything on Kiva is lending, so it's not donation. If you make a loan on Kiva, you will hopefully get repaid. We do place a lot of emphasis on connecting people, so you are making a loan to an individual across the world somewhere. And then finally, our poverty alleviation is a really, really important component of what we do. So when Kiva first started, all of our field partners, and this was about 7 years ago, all of our field partners were microfinance institutions. And all of the loans that you would see on Kiva were loans for income generation. However, so another important thing about Kiva funding is the funding that we provide to microfinance institutions is interest-free, or to all of our field partners. And that's because Kiva as an NGO, our lenders make 0% loans to borrowers on our website, and we just pass that money onto our field partners. And so we don't charge any interest, it's interest-free lending. So given that Kiva lending is interest-free, and our lenders bear the risk of default, so for every borrower posted on Kiva, if that borrower cannot repay their loan for any reason, our partner is actually not required to repay us. And so because Kiva lending is interest-free, lenders bear the risk of default, we started to really think about how we were using Kiva funds. We can't give our lenders any sort of commercial return, but what we can give them is social return. So for every lender coming onto Kiva, all they're looking to do is make a difference to someone's life. And so this sort of started with our management a few years ago when they really started thinking about this and said, you know, what we don't want to be doing is subsidizing profits for a really large microfinance institution. We don't want to be lender 1 of 15 on their balance sheet, providing them with interest-free funding. That doesn't really make sense with what we're trying to do. So we made a shift about 2 years ago, going back to Nikki's question, where we started to really think about what are the catalytic ways that we can use Kiva funding. How can we work with our partners to ensure that Kiva funding has the highest social impact possible? And so the way that we define social impact at Kiva, after discussing this many times, is we really want to work with our partners to provide financing for populations that have been traditionally left out, so extremely vulnerable populations or populations that have been discriminated against for health or gender or social reasons, in places that are very hard to reach. A lot of Kiva partners work in post-conflict countries or current conflict zones like Afghanistan through products that promote social causes. And this is sort of where our clean energy initiative comes in. So we've really been working with a lot of our field partners, existing and new, to fund innovative loan products, including clean energy products. And then finally, at prices that enable savings. So again, what we don't want to do is fund a microfinance institution that is charging a 25% or 35% interest on a solar energy loan, and sort of the profits that they're generating through that is going back to investors. That's really not the role that we see for Kiva funding. So when we sort of made the strategic shift towards catalytic use of Kiva funding, we also started to realize that we could move away from funding just microfinance institutions and really started to focus then on social enterprises. And the major reason why we did this is because, as we've just been discussing all morning in this room, sometimes it's very hard and it doesn't work in every context to have a microfinance institution be the funder for a clean energy loan, for example. So we started talking directly to social enterprises that were creating and manufacturing and distributing many different types of products. Solar lamps is one example. And seeing whether their business model could benefit from having a lending program directly introduced to it. So the example I'd like to speak to you about, because I feel like they're the most well-known, is Barefoot Power. Can I have a raise of hands for everyone that has heard of Barefoot Power before I start talking about that? Okay, great. So since most people here have, Barefoot Power does the design, manufacture, and distribution of microsolar products. And they came to Kiva saying, we work with a lot of rural entrepreneurs that buy our products and sell them in their markets. However, they don't always have the working capital that they need to buy these products from us up front. And if Barefoot, like a lot of our social enterprise partners, started to give credit to these these entrepreneurs themselves, it isn't a very scalable model for them, because that requires Barefoot to have tremendous amounts of capital for itself, which it doesn't. So they came to Kiva saying, is there a way for you to finance our entrepreneurs? This was a very new type of partnership for us, something we've never done before, because Barefoot doesn't have a lending program for itself. So we really started to think about, well, if you were to provide financing to your entrepreneurs, what would that look like? Who would give them the loan? Who would collect repayments from them? And so we worked with them to figure all of these questions out. I won't go into too much detail. And sometime last year, the first Barefoot loan that was funded on Kiva was actually to an entrepreneur in Tanzania for $50,000, which is a significantly larger loan size than we had ever funded on Kiva before. Our average loan size is about $600. And in Asia especially, most of our loans tend to be more like $200. So $50,000 was the first loan that we had ever funded for that much. And it ended up funding in 3 days, actually, very, very quickly, far quicker than we had anticipated either. So given the success of sort of the Barefoot model of funding social enterprises directly, We've now gone from just having one clean energy partner to having about 15. I won't list them all, but some examples are New Energy that was just brought on as a Kiva partner that does off-the-grid recharge, that has an off-grid recharging platform. Solar Sisters in Uganda that has a very similar business model to Barefoot. African Solar Rise, Ilu Mexico that does solar home systems, and Technosol in Nicaragua, which also does home systems.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. When we were talking earlier, you mentioned that in your opinion, there are differences between an energy program and a typical MFI in terms of the way you assess the organization, in terms of the kind of finance that they need. Can you explain to the group a little bit of your views on that?
Sure. So the one thing I forgot to mention in my very long rant is that we also do clean energy lending through microfinance organizations. So an existing Kiva partner or even a potential Kiva partner could come to us and say, we would like to introduce a clean energy lending program, and that's what we need funding for. So some examples of this are Vision Fund Cambodia in Cambodia. Bank in Mongolia actually has a huge clean energy initiative. They have about $1 million credit line with Kiva just for their clean energy vertical, which is quite large. And then
why don't you explain to the group what that's for? Because I think those loans are, well, or maybe I'll explain rather than make you do it. I particularly love those loans because, as you know, those of you who know Mongolia, I think it's about 8 months a year are cold, and people live in yurts. You know, they're sort of round buildings, and so the loans are for tea cozies that go on top of the yurts that insulate the systems, which I think is such a fantastic, so it's really an energy efficiency loan, which is very interesting as a model.
And also because Mongolia, during the winter months, from what I've heard, I haven't visited there myself, but because people burn so much wood to keep very warm, it actually increases pollution tremendously, especially the capital. And so these loans, in some way, help actually bring down pollution levels as well. The other example of a partner that's about to introduce solar loans through Kiva is Mahashakti Foundation in India. They're a fairly small or rather mid-level MFI and will be specifically using Kiva funding for this program. And so I wanted to use them as an example to answer your question directly, Nikki. I think that there is firstly a difference between an MFI like Bandhan, for example, that wants to start doing a clean energy initiative. What they can do is subsidize, and I was actually surprised in the conversation earlier that pricing didn't come up as much as I thought it would, or product design. I think for Kiva, what we realized with working with a lot of our partners is that a lot of work goes into pricing these loans the right way. And so an MFI like Bandhan, which has financing from multiple sources, is fairly large, they can cross-subsidize the cost of the solar loan against their larger portfolio. But for a small or mid-level MFI that doesn't have that flexibility, or even for an MFI that works in a country like Pakistan, for example, where the cost of funds are 12% at the minimum, it's very hard for them to price an affordable loan product, especially when it comes to clean energy. And so this is somewhere where we really see the role of Kiva funding, interest-free funding, to sort of help demonstrate. We also talked at our table earlier about how there is a lot of hesitation for solar. It hasn't really proven its track record yet. So in markets where people are slow to adopt new products, we hope that we can almost demonstrate a proof of concept, prove that these products are not only useful to clients, but also that clients repay over time, and then hopefully commercial investors will step in and take over.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And maybe we can move now to Mayukh, who is one of the founders of Milaap. And Mayukh, can you tell us the rationale for setting up Milaap?
So Milaap, I mean, it's kind of the setting up of Milaap was a thought process way back in 2009. So when I was working with Delight and Anojal, my other co-founder, had worked with SKS because we had run a pilot with D-Light at that, SKS D-Light financing pilot at that point of time. And the third co-founder, Saurabh, he was working with a technology company, mobile value-added service provider, Armacost. Now, so we had kind of seen the entire ecosystem evolve, and which we were discussing earlier in the morning as well. In terms of what we are seeing across India was that those were the days in which microfinance was completely moving towards its peak. You know, there were funds coming in from every sources. It kind of received real commercial interests. However, when we wanted to kind of go and talk about energy financing for D-Light, we figured out that there were lots of challenges even with the biggest of MFIs. And one of the biggest challenges was availability of funds. See, investors are ready to put money in microcredit, which is tried and tested model for the last 20 years. The moment you talk about energy access or any other deviation from the core product, it's always a challenge. And then there were loads of very good organizations which had worked at the ground level but did not have access to funds to do so. Now, so that was one part of the story. The second piece, what we looked at is from where the crowdfunding piece of Milaap also comes in, is the fact that we as individuals, we always relate to certain causes and we want to do something about it. And I was always passionate about education, Anuj himself extremely passionate about energy, Saurabh passionate about technology. So where we kind of found out, the entire mix is that, hey, if we could allow people to kind of, do something for the causes that they can relate to, and also in the process help, say, kickstart some kind of a model in allowing energy access on the ground or allowing clean water access on the ground, there would be a really nice combination coming up. So it's like a thought process from both the ends. From the side of lenders, what we are trying to say is that people like you, me, everyone, we relate to causes, but there's a lack of opportunity for us to kind of go and do something really tangible about it. On the ground side, we have a lot of people who are in need of access to clean energy, access to clean water, or education. So, and really there needs to be somebody who can be a bridge between the two. And that's where the thought process of Milaap came in. And that's where the entire idea of first a crowdfunding platform came in, because that establishes that, kind of link, the kind of personalized borrower stories. And on the other side, to reach out to the people who are in need of clean access and energy, microfinance became the medium. So I just want to stress on this fact that microfinance, we think, is the medium to reach out there. So right from the beginning of Milaap, we were very clear that we will choose certain causes and then build on that. So for example, which is there even till today, we chose 3 sectors. One was education and employability. The second was rural enterprises. And the third was essential household assets, which could be where the energy portfolio sits, which could be access to clean water through a sanitation facility or access to clean lighting through a solar lantern. And then use microfinance as a medium to make those, to support those 3 causes. And then take it to our lender base and let people relate to them. So, that's where the thought process of Milaap, or the germination of Milaap was.
Thank you. And tell us about the special characteristics of funds that are sourced through the crowd that makes it appealing or necessary in the overall energy access investment landscape, particularly thinking about India, particularly thinking about the AP crisis and how funding kind of dried up in that period. You ended up actually playing a very important catalytic role for those companies that are interested in energy lending.
Sure. So yeah, that's, takes us back to the great debate that we had at the start of the company, the starting days where, the question for us is that there are lots of microfinance companies still in India which needed money for regular microcredit loans. But at that point of time, because the fundamental philosophy with which we started was to support causes, we consciously took a choice that we will not go and work on the traditional microcredit portfolio. We thought that had reached a scale where we wanted to play a role was on the fringes. As we said, supporting of the causes and all. Now, in terms of how it is actually being helpful is, I believe, if you look at the photographs that are there on either of the sides, that's one of our, today one of our largest microfinance clients. And I remember in 2011, that was just the time when the crisis had started, I'd done a due diligence on this partner called DCBS, who sit out of around, I think, an hour and a half in a suburban local ride from Calcutta. So in 2011, I visited them, badly struck by the crisis. The banks had stopped the line of credit, and the entire organization did not have any money to disburse. So we had a discussion there, and I still remember, and I was discussing with Arvind also yesterday, I still remember on the way back to Calcutta, my opinion was this organization is going to find it difficult to survive. But then we will anyway start doing a very small lending, just because I believed in the intent of the promoter who was there. Animesh, unfortunately, couldn't make it to the summit, but it would have been very interesting to have him here. All I could say was, I believe in this intent of the person, and we would start with a very small test pilot portfolio. So it's actually kind of surprising that Nazim on one side is sitting who's at the higher side of the spectrum with big numbers and all. For us, we operate where even say to the last penny, I would say. So we just started with a very small pilot, and today to think of DCBS having a line of credit of 50 lakh rupees only on the solar portfolio is something I wouldn't have imagined myself. So what we realized is that in the entire process, we actually helped an organization through the crowdfunded money to survive the crisis, and today they are ready to take off. With various products, they are talking about micro enterprise with us as well. So I think that's where the social impact also lies. It's not only just talking of doing some borrowings, but creating systems on the ground, and I think that's what our lenders on the platform also are looking at.
Thank you again. And so what's different about Milaap? How are you different than other crowdfunding platforms? One of the things that comes to mind to me, we had Saurabh, who's one of the co-founders with Mayukh in New York recently at an event that we held, and he was talking about some of your campaign-based lending and also the corporate partners that you engage with, which I think is quite different than any of the other crowdfunders that I've met in the past.
I think it boils down to again the fact that why did we set up Milaap, or what was that exactly was the reason for setting up. So we believed in certain causes, and that's how we set up Milaap. And microfinance became a medium to reach out to those causes. Now what we realized is that when we are, there are many people like us who relate to the three causes that we have mentioned, and the entire idea of these campaigns run by individuals comes from there. They know that there are lots of people who relate to the cause of education. There are lots of people who relate to the cause of energy access. And what we realized is that we need to empower such individuals for them to do something for the causes. And that was the idea behind starting a campaign. So a campaign typically is like, we will go and post certain borrowers and reach out to some of our active lenders and say that, hey, are you ready to take up ownership of this entire fundraising? It could be as small as 35,000 or 50,000 rupees. But what it gives is that it empowers the individual to do something really tangible for the cause that he relates to. I mean, our solar financing programs, and you will see something coming up very soon during Diwali on Milaap platform. There is something we ran on education as well. So it comes from the fact that that individuals want to do something for the causes. There is no medium to do it, and that's where Milaap fulfills that gap. And an individual takes ownership of the entire campaign, then gets his own social circle to kind of actively promote it and raise the funds for him.
So I just want to give you an example. Chris from the Art Finance team that some of you know fell madly in love with Milaap, and he ended up running a marathon and raising money from all sorts of friends and family, including his 97-year-old grandmother. He posted on Facebook, I'm running a marathon for this cause. It's for these people who are, really doing something important for poor people around the world. And he posted it on Facebook. He didn't even know that his 97-year-old grandmother had a Facebook account. And she ended up giving him, I don't know, she gave him $50 or something, but he ended up raising much more money than he expected through this campaign. And what Milaap has been able to do is collect people like Chris, many of them, to fund organizations like DCBS that would otherwise not have had access to finance. And the other thing that Saurabh told us about were some of the corporate campaigns, which were actually very interesting also.
Yeah, and just to give you one example more of from Chris, so we received recently a letter from a lender who said that, hey, thank you very much for allowing me to run this campaign. What I did in the process was that I reached out to all my friends, family and everyone, and my school and college friends with whom I haven't been in touch with the last 10 years, I've now got connected to every one of them. So, in terms of the similar example that we talked about an individual championing a certain cause and wanting to do something about it, we saw a similar characteristic emerging in certain companies as well. So within the companies, there are a couple of things. Number one is that the company, as a core organization, wants to support certain causes. The second piece is what the company wants to do as well is to get some sort of an engagement going on with the employees, because if it's just work, it doesn't create that kind of an atmosphere where the employees feel kind of empowered, or it doesn't feel like that close an atmosphere. What a lot of companies eventually have started doing and have related to is use this entire platform or opportunity of Milaap to run employee engagement campaigns. So we do not run any fundraising campaigns like asking them for funds or anything. We go to companies, we run events with them. It could be like the best. One of the best examples has been running a employee engagement program like "Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader?", which is essentially a quiz program, which we run in the companies, and then individual employees give their contributions out of their own discretion. So it's, again, summarizing the two, it brings us back to the point that every individual out here was been successful in life, wants to give back something. We're just figuring out the right avenues to help them support that and then bring a tangible change on the ground as well.
So, one final question. With crowdfunding, the money comes in kind of unpredictable bits. And so how do you smooth those inconsistencies in the way in which you actually source the funding?
So before that, it will be helpful if I just tell you how exactly the value chain is working. So we have a set of customers who are in need of energy access, and there we are saying that a microfinance kind of a program can work the best. And therefore we need somebody who will manage the lending on the ground. To help manage those lending on the ground and to provide them capital which can incubate such programs, Milaap is a crowdfunding platform. Now, of course, when I'm talking of a crowdfunding platform, there will be a variability in funds which we raise. Say, for example, there are 10 profiles that are posted on the platform. We have had instances where 10 profiles of 30,000 rupees each in some of our other courses we have raised in 2 days. But it may not be immediately raised as well. So there is always a variation in the funds that's involved. Now, when I'm working with a microfinance partner or a funding partner, it is actually very difficult for the financing partner to be exposed to the variability of something that he does not have a control on. Because as I said, we believe in focus and in core competence. So, and that's exactly where Armacost comes to an immense help for us. Because what we do is that we make certain fixed commitments to our partnering organizations. We say that, hey, for a microfinance organization, you should not be bothered about whether I'll be able to raise funds on the internet or not. You should be looking at us like any other lender, because the systems and processes have to be streamlined. So we become like any other lender, where we make a fixed commitment of the funds that will come in. If we are able to raise it from the internet, great, and then the rest of it comes in from the institutional investors, where the total amount is given out to the MFIs. So say for example, one of the reasons why we have been able to scale up our solar financing program is because of the presence of Armacost. Because what an institutional investor gives us is the confidence to go out and say to a microfinance organization, we will do the crowdfunding for you guys, we will do it at a low cost. However, we will not expose you to any kind of variability which is there on a crowdfunding platform. So I think that's where the entire partnership becomes streamlined, and each entity focuses on what its core focus is. So, and I think it's just like saying, somebody was asking us what exactly, my nephew was asking me what exactly you do, and what we figured out is that where we want to build our core competence as well, we are just effective storytellers. That's all we do. We tell stories, we put it across in a structured way so that people can relate to a cause, and it just benefits the entire system in that way.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for telling us the Milaap story. And now we're going to move to Govind, who is, as I said earlier, I know you want to ask a question, but let's save it till the very end, okay? So as I said earlier, Utkarsh is a rapidly growing Indian MFI that has recently decided that it wants to engage in energy lending, and Govind is a hardcore CEO, and he has put this whole process through a very rigorous analysis. And so, you know, for Govind to decide that he wants to do this, to me, is very interesting. And I'd love you to tell us what your rationale was for starting an energy program. What's behind it for you?
Okay, thank you, Nikki. And I could actually get a lot, wealth of experience in this room. So I'm really enlightened. And when I go back, I think I can do much better or much more than what I had done earlier. Thank you very much to everyone. So whatever you do, you come from two things. One is your own past or your own experiences, and then second comes from your, the sustainability and what you can do in long run. So the first thing comes from your own experience. So I don't know how many of you have actually studied in a kerosene lamp, not even the lamp, under lamp. And I used to tell this story, and I think I told you Arvind also. So I mean, people are talk of various type of burn, but there's a hair burn also. So if you study under lamp, and it was not a lantern, it was an open lamp in fact. And normally when you're studying at the late hours, so you are likely to take a nap in fact. You suddenly will do this way. And then the lamp hits your head and you get this, what I call hair burn, and it smells very bad in fact. So that must have been done in the early 70s, when I was a kid and studying in my primary school. But I still remember that. And that is still rampant. It's not that things have changed so dramatically during the last 40 years. Things are still, in many geographies of the country, still the same. When I started microfinance 4 years back, so one idea was to, I was heading microbanking business with ICICI Bank, the largest private sector bank in the country, in fact, and doing microfinance and maybe a wholesale lender. So during last 2 years when I was with ICICI Bank, when I was microbanking, I thought that okay, it's time that I should start doing something at my own. And one of the things was that microfinance is one thing, and maybe it was also growing at a very fast stage at that time. So I finally decided that I'll become entrepreneur. And when you decide to do certain things, there are certain given things with that. For example, I used to stay in Mumbai, but when I had to do microfinance, I moved from Mumbai. I was in 20 years from Mumbai, the largest city in the country. I moved to a smaller place in Varanasi so that you understand how community behaves and how community works in fact. So our headquarters is not in Mumbai, where I lived for 20 years, but it's in a smaller city called Varanasi in the eastern UP, which is the most, you can say, excluded region from the development, from the economic development, from social development angle also. And the adjoining area is a state called Bihar, where in Indian terms also, the average Indian, whatever electricity they get, for Bihar it is 20% of average Indian in fact. That is the status currently in the state of Bihar. So first was my personal experience, and when I saw what is happening to our clients in their houses, and when we meet the microfinance customers, and we still have the conventional method of microfinance where we lend through women only. So the women, whenever we talk about their own vision, in fact, the first vision is they want their kid to study, in fact. That is the first thing. Everything else comes secondary for them. And when we see these kids studying, so I could still relate to my younger age, how difficult it is to do in the kerosene lamp and kerosene lantern. So again, that is the social, or you can say emotional motive of doing this. Secondly, when I started microfinance, I was very sure that one, I want to make it a multi-product environment. Even today, though there are some regulatory issues also, but idea was to make it multi-product, multi-services. So that's why after this, we are just 4 years old, so we are not very old in the system. We started in September 2009 only, and currently we have 112 branches, but we serve in the you can say in terms of poverty, the most poorest area of the country. In terms of population, the most dense area of the country, and socio-economic conditions are really poor, in fact. And in terms of microfinance penetration, this was the lowest penetrated geography which I chose, in fact, and moved from Mumbai to that area. So after microfinance, we started MSME also. So typically it's very easy to get a $200 loan whenever you are doing a microfinance, but it's very difficult to get $2,000 loan because there is no one to give that $2,000 loan. I mean, especially I'm talking in the context of Indian industry. So then I started these small and medium enterprises, MSME, where we give us lower than bank loan and higher than JLG loans basically. Then we started our national pension scheme because the type of client we have got, they never keep anything for their old age. They don't even think what will happen at the age of 60. They say, we have to survive today, then we'll think of what will happen at the age of 60. So started national pension scheme basically where we distribute this and they start getting pension at the age of 60. So these were some of the ideas that our clients, so whatever is relevant for our client and whatever is relevant for us, we'll do all those things. So the solar energy is one of such things that we know that these people are not getting lighting, or if they are getting light, it's not proper light. In fact, many of the times it happened that my own employees, they were not able to contact through mobile also. Whenever I ask what happened, they say our mobile could not be charged because there was no power. Sometimes that is one of the things. But sometimes the quality of power is so bad, you can't even charge your mobile. There is electricity in fact. I mean, your meter is running, but you can't charge any of the, you can't run your TV, you can't run your fridge, you can't run your normal electrical equipment. So it's not only the availability of power, but even the quality of power. Yeah, especially I'm talking of my geography, where I operate from. So that's what we are thinking for this. In fact, Nikki, this is my thought not for now, but for last 3.5 years. After one year of starting this, in fact, I used to have a solar panel and solar lights in my own cabin. In fact, I had those for 2.5 years just to see the impact of these, whether these are really useful or not. Because if my client has to use it, I should at least see this is at least reasonable. Second, the type of product we used to get 3 years back, and in fact I had met even Delight at that time. I was not very convinced or not happy about the type of products they were offering at that time. So since then I'm exploring it, and I also had an idea that our office should be solar in fact, and we are still trying for that. So I'm looking for people who can. Recently, one of the manufacturers, they told that they can do solar for my head office. In fact, that is what we are looking at now, where the requirement could be as high as 6 to 10 kW type of requirement for our head office. And we also intend to do solar for our branches, which are around 112 currently. So our idea is to go for solar end to end, but current focus, because I think that there the products are available. Current focus is for our client base, who are not getting type of electricity we want to give them. Currently, we are at a very, very advanced stage, and thanks to Nikki's team, in fact, they were there in ground, and at least the nitty-gritties and the technical aspects of how solar energy works. In fact, I mean, to be very frank, I was not aware. I was aware of the from the upper level. Okay, this is what it should be, but what goes inside, I was not even aware of those things. So her team has done a fantastic job from market research, from product evaluation, what type of processes you should have. So they are really, hopefully in next 30 days time, we should be up and running in field, the way we have in the SARS. We intend to look for cash in as well as, what we call repayment-based schedule. In case someone is willing to take a cash in, we are willing for that also. And as many of the panelists, and we had discussion also, we have a separate entity which will do this. Because my experience is that whatever we are doing, whether we are doing National Pension Scheme or MSME, we have a separate vertical or separate team for that. Because the moment you mix teams, there is very difficult to understand what is happening, what is not happening, and there is always if it is something is not happening, people can always blame it is not happening because of certain reasons. So we want you to have a separate vertical. So there is a separate vertical, there is a separate team, which is a not-for-profit team, not-for-profit company. There are two structures basically. The microfinance happens under non-banking financial company. It's a for-profit structure. But for energy and health and vocational training, in fact, we have such programs also where we have a not-for-profit company. I mean, in India, it is called Section 25 company where you don't generate profits or you don't share those profits. So that it works on social and those type of initiatives. So we have a separate company and separate vertical to take care of this initiative. And hopefully, in next 30 days time, it should be up and running in field.
Well, we're very excited to see what the results will be, and I wonder if you could share with everyone here some of the results of that market research that happened earlier, some of the things that you learned. People are sometimes skeptical. Are clients willing to pay? I think many of us here have examples that show that they are, but I think that you ended up discovering some quite interesting things from your clients, and I understand from Tumby, who's part of my team, that you have very feisty clients who have no problem telling anyone what they think. So perhaps you can share some of those insights.
First issue, they highlighted. Second issue was that, in fact, there are a lot of people who are not willing to go for cash. Yeah. Most of the people who are willing to do this, they want to go through installments. In fact, they told that our monthly expenses around 100 rupees in Indian terms. That is what we can pay for getting a solar. So I think their idea is two ways. One is the spending. It's a spending to the extent they are spending today. So if it is 100 rupees per month, they are comfortable with that. And secondly, also I think they are very smart people. They also want to see that product runs for 18 months or so. So if they pay in cash, even if they are having, and it is not working after 3 months, they will find it difficult to how to take care of that part. So most of the people who are willing to take it, they are willing to take it on a credit, 12 to 18 months type of credit, and not many people are willing to take on cash. That is our exposure. But yes, initially we found it difficult, but when we could actually demonstrate it, so in many of the cases we took the product. I mean, some of our suppliers who are sitting in this room also, they have provided the product. We went to the product and showed the demo. In fact, in some of the cases we kept in their rooms also, for 2 or 3 days. There you can say response was much better and much bigger. And one more thing, what they always look for is the ruggedness, the strong type of products. If it is fragile, then I'm sure that no one is even going to look at that. So what is the test called? That you throw it on with your full force basically.
Yeah.
Drop test. But drop is a small, is a very mild word in fact. It's really you have to throw it in, you can bang it. Bang test. You have to bang it basically. So you have to show that you can bang it and it is not getting impacted. And that type of test, when we showed, then the results were definitely different. People are willing to go for it, but they are willing to go with installments only, not on cash basis.
So I'm glad that you mentioned the fact that you're looking at solar solutions not just for customers but also for Utkarsh itself. And I think it's interesting. A lot of microfinance organizations operating in rural areas have energy access problems themselves, so that they can understand the situation that their clients are in. And I think that's a very interesting kind of holistic model that you're approaching. One of the questions, the final question really that I want to ask you before we open up for questions from the group here is the kind of capital requirements for you as an MFI starting this new line of business, which is a little bit unconventional, and the role of grants versus debt versus equity in that kind of a financing composition.
When our team also was with us and they were telling that we can get funding support from FWW, we in fact, thank you very much, Mayukh also told that they will also support for this initiative. Our first, you can say, impression or first reaction to our team was that during the pilot, I may require, around $15,000-$20,000. In fact, I mean, it may not be more than that. So at least initial funding, even if we have to take from our own sources, and what even Saheba was mentioning that, so we will have enough funding to take care of the initial 6 months, 1 month, 1 year's time. That's not an issue. But anyway, we have got two, you can say, in principle offers in place. And we expect that in days ahead we should be able to generate enough debt for this entity also. And we anyway have a you can say good capital base today for this company also. I'm not talking the main company, but for this company also, because 2% of the profit before tax of main company goes to this company. So that is what is happening. So that's why we have got not only got solar but other initiatives also, like I mentioned health and vocational training. We have a full-fledged 200 people on vocational training, and where we do end-to-end training and training till marketing. All things are done by us. So it has got good capital base and it can be enhanced also. And I'm hopeful that debt should not be a problem in days ahead. And there are a lot of entities now who are looking at, even places like Sydney, they are willing to look at this type of entity. There is a DFID program for our 4 poorest state. So I don't foresee much challenges in getting raising funds for, and I myself the banker, I think that is, if I'm not able to do that, then I can't say that I'm a banker. So that I have been doing for my main company, for this company also I don't foresee. Funding should be a challenge. If my, during this 6 branches pilot, if I'm able to get good value for my clients, they are happy with this, I don't foresee any challenges in scaling this up.
Fantastic. So on that note, I'd love to open up to questions. Arvind, you had your hand up for about 30 minutes, and I'm sorry not to call you earlier. I don't know if you still have your question.
Yeah, Nikki, just on a note, yes. I mean, I just want to add something, is that what Govind was telling for the last 2 minutes is exactly what we wanted to hear when we started Milaap 3 years back. When we looked at each of the sectors, be it water and sanitation, be it education, be it energy, if you look at the macro numbers in India, they in themselves can be very, very successful business propositions. Where we needed somebody was to start, at least kickstart the entire engine, to get the incubation running and prove some test cases. And I'm sure what Govind is telling today, 3 years back when we went to MFIs, the first question was, who is going to give me money for this? So, I mean, that's exactly where we are seeing the evolution of the entire sectors happening. And it's across both. Energy is one part of the story. I mean, we are seeing that happen in the education segment as well, and also in rural enterprises as well.
So, Arvind, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah. This is actually for both Kiva and Milaap. I kept hearing 2 different terms. One was donors, and the other was lenders. So, what percentage of people you work with are lenders versus donors? Or is the money even paid back at all at any point in time? And if yes, then what are the interest rates, what are the repayment schedules, etc.?
So, to take the first part of your question, I'd say Kiva's facilitated about $500 million in lending since we started, and about 80% of that is through individual lenders, and 20% from organizations like Milaap is now raising funding from. So Google is one of our funders, where they just give us, we call them super lenders, so institutions that provide us with funding versus individuals that provide us with, that lend on Kiva. They're all loans, not donations. What we found, though, is about 97% of our users actually keep their funds in Kiva. So they never, even though they have the option of withdrawing their funds from Kiva after they've been repaid, they actually relend to somebody else. So it's only about 3% of our users actually take their funds out of Kiva. Most of them continue to relend.
But they're not receiving interest. It's a 0% loan.
Exactly, it's a 0% interest-free loan. And the last part of your question I also wanted to answer, which was the historical repayment rate on Kiva has been 99%. However, now that we're starting to do these riskier loan products, we are seeing that come down for specific kinds of products in specific markets. But overall, the repayment rate is still 98%.
Yeah. So similarly on Milaap as well, the entire causes that we are saying we support is through a lending. So on the lending side of it, it's quite similar to Kiva as well. So every lender who comes on board gets the principal back. It's not an interest fee. So the idea is that we are not talking about financial returns, but kind of a social return for the lenders. In terms of the numbers that we have supported, we have just crossed $1 million in lending, specifically in these 3 sectors only. Repayment rates, till now we haven't seen any default at all. But yeah, too early days for us to comment on that on a statistical basis. And yes, similar experience as Kiva has seen in terms of all the lenders who are willing to relend. So over 90% of the lenders are willing to kind of relend the money. And in terms of our mix, I would say somewhere around 70% of our money comes from the online people who are putting the money online. And the rest 30, as we said, is from institutional lenders. I would say again, we haven't gone into the donation mode at all. So even with Finance, it's a soft lending program that we are managing, is from the institutional investors, primarily with the intent that to keep those buffer funds for us to streamline the relationships.
May I have a follow-up question?
You may. One follow-up question.
One follow-up question. do Kiva and Milaap essentially facilitate this transaction, or is it that companies lend to you and then you further relend this? Or are you saying, you need money, I know someone who has money, let me connect you and I'm providing you with a platform to do this?
For us, it's both. So some of our super lenders, for example, would come to us and say, I have $1 million, but I only want to lend them in India. Or we've had lenders come to us and say, I have X million dollars, but I want Kiva to start working in Egypt. And so we've helped that happen, versus other institutional lenders where we just manage the funds and they say, we're going to give you a certain amount of funds and we would like that to go anywhere. It doesn't have to be a specific place or a specific product, but to answer your question, it is both.
So in terms of Milaap, to answer that question, the way we see ourselves is not only just facilitating for the funds, but also an engagement platform. So in terms of, and the way we keep our focus on some of the things. So for example, we today have 3 specific causes that we support, not yet opened up for anything else. So therefore we connect with even bigger institutions who also connect with the same similar cause. So that's where the streamlining happens. We do not, we haven't yet gotten to the more of saying that, a larger lender would immediately come in and say, hey, we want you to do something, and we would start doing that. So we keep our focus in that way, and that's has helped us to scale, as well. That there are 3 or 4 specific causes that Milaap supports, and we are kind of doing it today. So, and we have a lot of lenders. Say, for example, Armacost was somebody who were looking for energy financing, and energy was one of the areas that we want to support, and that's where, the relationship has been really strong in that sense. And yes, was there any other part of the question?
No, I think for you, do you take the money on your books and then?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
So at this point of time, because, as I said, we want to support a cause and we want to make it a streamlined mechanism as well. So we try to figure out what is the best way to do it. Now, if you're talking of, getting money into India and helping people to do a lot of things, so to take care of a lot of issues which are on the regulatory front and everything, we have created the structure which is the best optimal structure for that. Okay. And at this point of time, taking money on our books and supporting MFIs is what we figured out that the best structure. So that's a question of an operational question of how do we best structure it to cater for the people who are supporting our causes.
The last thing I'd like to add to that, actually, and I'm sure Milaap does something similar, is we also have a lot of institutional lenders that do loan matching. So, for example, one of our lenders, their mandate is to promote entrepreneurship in the Middle East. And so they match all of our loans to Arab youth. So for every Kiva lender that makes a loan, Celtac will match twice over.
So before we all go, I'd like to thank this amazing panel of fantastic speakers that have provided some really interesting insights. So let's give them a hand.